My wife and I had just finished shopping for our son's 21st birthday at Northgate Mall. I went ahead to grab the truck while she stepped aside to take a call from the hospital. I didn't think twice about it. That was her life, always on call. I was almost at the vehicle when an older parking attendant approached me. "Is that your wife?" he asked quietly. I nodded. He glanced back at her, then pulled out his phone. "Sir, you might want to see this." 30 seconds later, what he showed me made my stomach drop. "Welcome to Family Revenge Stories. I'm truly grateful you're here. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I love seeing how far these stories travel. And when you reach the end rate, this story from 1 to 10, your feedback helps me craft even stronger, more powerful stories for you. Also, a brief note. This narrative includes fictional elements woven in for storytelling and reflection. Any resemblance to real names or places is purely coincidental, but the lessons about family trust and consequences are very real. Saturday afternoons in September usually meant yard work or Seahawks pregame prep. But this Saturday, September 7th, 2024, Diane had convinced me to spend the afternoon at Northgate Mall hunting for Evan's 21st birthday gift. "He's not a kid anymore," she'd said that morning over coffee. "Let's get him something grown up." We'd spent 3 hours wandering through department stores, finally settling on a TAG Heuer watch that made my wallet weep. But Evan was graduating with his engineering degree next spring, and Diane insisted he deserved something that would last. We were heading back to the truck, shopping bag swinging, when her phone rang. "Seattle Grace," she said, glancing at the screen. Her expression shifted instantly from relaxed to alert. "This is Diane Thornton." I watched her face change as she listened. Her free hand came up to rub her temple the way it always did when stressed. "How high is the fever? CT results right. Give me 20 minutes. She ended the call with an apologetic smile. "Emergency in the ICU, doctor. Prescott's out sick, and they need authorization for a transfer." "I'm so sorry, babe." "It's fine," I said, swallowing disappointment. That's the job. I need to call Dr. Vaughn to coordinate. She was already pulling up contacts. "Can you grab the truck? I'll meet you at the entrance. You know how he is with details. This might take a few minutes." Dr. Vaughn. The name didn't register then, it would later. I took her bags and headed across the parking garage while she stepped aside, phone already at her ear. Our silver Silverado was parked on level 3 west corner, same general area. I always chose a habit from my military days when finding your vehicle quickly mattered. The concrete structure was packed with Saturday shoppers, fluorescent lights, casting harsh shadows across rows of SUVs. I was 30 feet from the truck when the parking attendant approached. He was older, late 50s maybe, with gray-streaked dark hair and a weathered face. His uniform hung loose on a wiry frame, but his eyes caught me. Sharp. Careful. Like a man about to deliver bad news and hating it. "Excuse me, sir." I stopped keys halfway out. "Yeah." He glanced past me toward where Diane stood with her back to us, still on her phone. When he looked back, something in his expression made my stomach tighten. "Is that your wife?" he asked quietly. "The woman in the blue jacket." I followed his gesture. Diane was 50 feet away, animated on her call, gesturing the way she always did when explaining something complex. Even from here, I could hear her laugh, bright and genuine, that laugh. The one I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "Yeah, that's Diane." My voice came out cautious. "Why?" His jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, then seemed to steel himself. "My name's Vincent. I work here Tuesday through Saturday." He paused. 2 weeks ago, I saw something I've been debating whether to tell you about." Another pause. "Because what I saw, you need to know." Cold dread washed over me. "What are you talking about?" He turned his phone toward me. The video was grainy security camera footage from a high angle, but the timestamp was crystal clear. August 24th, 2024. 3:47 p.m. This same garage, this same level. There was Diane, with a man in surgical scrubs. He stood too close, hand resting on her hip with casual familiarity. She laughed that same laugh, and then he leaned in. The kiss wasn't quick or uncertain. It was practiced, comfortable, the kind that came from repetition. 30 seconds of video, 25 years of marriage shattered. I watched it twice, forcing myself to catalog details through the shock. The man was younger, mid-40s maybe, fit, confident. And Diane's body language was relaxed, leaning into him. This wasn't their first time. This wasn't a mistake. "What I debated showing you," Vincent said quietly, giving me space. "But if it were my wife, I'd want to know. I'd want the truth before I wasted more years on a lie." My throat felt like broken glass. "Who is he?" "Han, don't know his name. But he's been here 4 times in the last month. Always around 3:30. Always in those dark blue surgical scrubs. Always with her." He paused. And after the first time, something felt off. So I started keeping records. Records, security footage, evidence. The word cut through my shock. This wasn't just some random guy feeling sorry for a stranger. Vincent had been watching, documenting. "Why?" "Well, Mr. Thornton," I said automatically. "Caleb Thornton." Something flickered across his face. Recognition maybe, but it vanished before I could read it. "Mr. Thornton, I'm sorry I had to be the one to show you this." His voice carried genuine regret. "But better to know now than keep living in the dark, right?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. In the distance, Diane laughed again, still oblivious. She looked happy, carefree, like a woman who'd successfully balanced her Saturday with her husband, and her Saturday with her what? Her colleague, her lover. My mind raced through memories, rewriting them. Every late hospital shift, every weekend on call, every time she'd come home exhausted, smelling like antiseptic. How many had been real? How many had been him? But even through the rage and betrayal churning in my gut, 12 years of military intelligence training kicked in. I'd spent a career as an analyst, learning to process information without emotion, to wait for the complete picture before acting, to understand that premature moves lost wars. Don't react. Gather intelligence. Confirm everything. Then strike with precision. "Thank you," I told Vincent. My voice was steady, controlled. "I appreciate you telling me." He studied me for a long moment. "You're not going to confront her right now." Not yet." I glanced at Diane wrapping up her call. "Not here." Something like respect crossed his features. "If you need anything more, evidence, testimony, whatever, you know where to find me. Tuesday through Saturday, 2 to 10. I filed that away and forced myself toward the truck. By the time Diane reached me, I had my expression locked down. Neutral. Just tired from shopping. "Crisis averted," she said brightly, sliding into the passenger seat. "You know how Dr. Vaughn is. Always panicking over nothing." She set her phone in the cup holder and smiled that smile I'd fallen for 26 years ago. "Thanks for grabbing the car, babe. My feet are killing me." Dr. Vaughn. The name landed like a physical blow. The man in the scrubs. The man she'd been kissing 2 weeks ago. The man she'd just spent 10 minutes coordinating with. "No problem," I said, starting the engine. She talked the whole drive home, hospital politics. Evan's birthday plans, a new restaurant we should try. I made appropriate sounds, nodded at the right moments, even smiled when she touched my arm. But inside, everything had changed. The man who would have confronted her in that garage who would have let emotion drive his choices, demanded answers, made a scene that man died somewhere between Vincent's video and the driver's seat. The one behind the wheel now was different. Someone who understood that showing your cards too early meant losing everything. Someone who knew real victory required patience, planning, and cold calculation. Dr. Vaughn. I filed the name with everything else. The timestamps, the scrubs, Vincent's careful documentation. The way Diane said his name, familiar, casual, like someone she spoke with daily. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. My voice stayed calm, answering her questions. My face showed nothing but a tired husband after a long day of shopping. But behind that mask, a different man was taking notes, calculating, planning. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The house was dark when we pulled into the driveway. Bellevue's suburbs had that September quiet lawn, sprinklers on timers, porch lights glowing yellow, the distant hum of I-405 fading to white noise. Normal, peaceful, a different lifetime. Diane hummed while brushing her teeth some off-key pop song. I watched through the bathroom mirror as she caught my eye and smiled, genuine, warm, nothing to hide. Long day, she said, rinsing her toothbrush. But Evan's going to love that watch. Yeah, he will. She kissed my cheek and pulled back the covers on her side. Our bed. The one we'd picked out 15 years ago. The one where we'd whispered about our son's grades and college applications and whether he was ready for the world. How much of that had been real? I went through my routine on autopilot, teeth contacts, out phone on the nightstand. Diane was already under the covers, scrolling through something on her phone. Blue light illuminated her focused expression. Then she placed it under her pillow. Not on the nightstand, not beside her, under the pillow. I'd watched her do this for months without questioning it. My alarm's too loud on the nightstand, she'd explained once. This way the vibration wakes me without disturbing you. Considerate, thoughtful, reasonable. Now I knew better. I climbed in, turned off my lamp, stared at the ceiling. The house settled with familiar creaks. The furnace kicked on. A dog barked twice down the street. Diane's breathing evened out within minutes. She'd always been a quick sleeper, planes, waiting rooms, the couch during Seahawks games. I used to envy that. Tonight I watched the digital clock. 11:47, 12:13, 1:28. At 2:04 a.m. her phone buzzed under the pillow. Soft. Muffled. But I was so wired I heard it clearly. Diane shifted. Reached under the pillow, fingers brushing the phone. Then she smiled. Still asleep. A small, unconscious curve of her lips. Who makes you smile like that, even in your dreams? Dr. Vaughn, dark blue scrubs, confident hands. That practiced kiss. I forced myself to breathe. 4 counts in 4, hold 4 out. Box breathing from my army days. Staying calm under fire. Because this was fire. My mind cycled through the past 8 months. Vincent had said 4 times in the last month, which meant this had been going on longer. 8 months of signs I'd missed. The gym bag in her trunk that never needed fresh clothes. The new perfume she'd started wearing in June, floral, expensive, not her usual scent. Her phone always face down. Now passcode locked, notifications hidden. Work's been stressful, she'd said when I'd asked. Hospital politics, budget cuts. I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I, 25 years? A son, a mortgage, joint accounts, retirement dreams. You don't question solid ground until you're falling through it. The rage came in waves. I wanted to shake her awake, demand answers, throw that phone across the room. Make her look at me while I asked who Dr. Vaughn was and how long she'd been lying. But under the rage ran something colder. 12 years as a military intelligence analyst had taught me that emotion kills strategy. Acting on impulse gets people hurt. The person who gathers information and strikes at the right moment wins, not the person who strikes first. If I confronted her now, what did I have? 1 security video. A suspicious phone habit. Gut feeling. She'd deny it, explain it away. Maybe accuse me of paranoia of not trusting her, and I'd have shown my hand before knowing the full game. No, better to investigate, document, build evidence that would hold up when I needed it. I needed a private investigator, someone who could follow her, confirm Vincent's video, find more. Bank records, phone records, patterns, because if this was real, and I knew it was, I needed to protect myself. Protect Evan, protect everything I'd built. At 3:47 a.m., her phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't smile, but she reached for it, still asleep, pulling it closer like a child with a teddy bear. I closed my eyes and counted breaths. Morning crawled forward. 4:15, 5:02, 6:33. When Diane's alarm went off at 7, I'd been awake 8 hours straight. She stretched, yawned, rolled over, smiling. Morning, babe. Sleep okay. Like a rock. Downstairs, I went through motions. Started the coffee maker she'd insisted we needed 2 Christmases ago. Pulled out eggs, butter bread. Set the table while she showered. When she came down, hair damp, smelling like vanilla shampoo, she was already talking. Evan texted last night. He's thinking about coming home next weekend. We should take him to that steakhouse he loves. She poured coffee, added cream. Oh, and I've been looking at kitchen remodels. Those granite countertops we talked about. I think we should finally do them. She sat at the island, scrolling through Pinterest while I scrambled eggs. I nodded. Made sounds. Asked about countertop colors. Normal. Automatic. A performance I could deliver in my sleep. Because behind the breakfast routine and the coffee and the conversation about kitchen renovations, I was calculating. Vincent's offer. If you need anything, evidence, testimony, you know where to find me. First move. Find a private investigator. Get documentation. Build the case. Second move. Protect assets. Talk to a lawyer. Understand my options. Third move. Wait. Watch. Let her think everything was fine while I gathered ammunition. Diane laughed at something on her phone. Look at this backsplash. Too modern. Little bit, I said, plating eggs. What about the subway tile? She smiled. You always know what I'm thinking. No, Diane. I never did. I set breakfast in front of her. Poured orange juice. Sat across from her at the table we'd refinished together 5 years ago. She talked about Evan's visit, about calling him later to confirm plans, about whether we should repaint the guest room before he came home. And I listened, responded, played my part, because this was war now. Maybe it had been war for 8 months while I'd slept through the invasion, but I was awake now, and in war, the side that strikes smarter always wins. Sunday morning sunlight filtered through the windows, catching dust in the air. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator's hum and a distant lawnmower. Once those sounds meant peace. Now they meant privacy. I opened my laptop and typed Private Investigator Seattle, 247 results. I narrowed it down, Divorce Investigation, Seattle Surveillance Expert. 30 minutes later, I found Brady Merrick. His website was clean and direct. 15 years experience, former Seattle PD, domestic cases, discretion guaranteed. No flashy promises, just competence. His office was in SoDo inside a converted warehouse. Not the cliché trench coat setup. Better. I called. Merrick Investigations. My name is Caleb Thornton. I need to hire someone. Today. A pause. What's the situation? My wife is having an affair. I need to know everything. 2 o'clock. Address is on the site. Come alone. He hung up. Brady's office was on the 3rd floor, past a yoga studio and a design firm. The door was unmarked. Inside the space was spare desk cabinets, coffee maker. No family photos, no clutter. Brady looked about 40. Lean, controlled. His eyes assessed me quickly. Former cop, without question. Mr. Thornton, he said, gesturing to a chair. Tell me what you know. I gave him the outline. The parking garage footage Vincent had shown me. 8 months of warning signs. The phone hidden under her pillow. 2 a.m. messages. He asked sharp questions. Her workplace schedule, joint accounts, children. When I finished, he leaned back. You're calm. Most people aren't. I was military intelligence, I said. Emotion clouds, judgment. Something shifted in his expression. What exactly do you want? Everything. Who he is. How long. Where they meet. Financial movement, hers and his. Communications, if possible. I need something that stands in court. He nodded. $150 an hour plus expenses. 2 weeks for a full profile. I'll pay double if you do it in one. He paused. 300 plus expenses. Knowledge is leverage. Right now, she has it. He studied me, then amended the contract. 1 week. No guarantees on depth if she's cautious. Prioritize identity and financials. Fair. He stood and offered his hand. Updates via encrypted email. Password changes daily. Don't access from a shared device. Understood. At the door, he added, whatever you're feeling, don't show it. If she senses suspicion, she cleans up. I've already started. Tuesday evening brought steady Seattle rain. Diane was on the couch watching a hospital drama. I was in my office door, cracked open, waiting. At 7:47 p.m., the encrypted email arrived. A separate text delivered the password. I entered it carefully. The report opened. Brady had identified him, Dr. Preston Vaughn, 45 cardiac surgeon at Seattle Grace Hospital. Lives in a downtown condo on Westlake Avenue. Then the activity log. Monday yesterday they met at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Room 847 registered under his name. She entered at 2:15 p.m. Exited at 4:47 p.m. 2 hours and 32 minutes. I read it 3 times. 2 hours and 32 minutes while I reviewed blueprints at a job site. While I texted her asking what she wanted for dinner. While I believed we were building a future. Tuesday today they met again. Northgate parking garage. Level 3. Physical contact observed. 8 minutes. The same garage where Vincent had first shown me footage. They were comfortable. Repeating patterns. The financial summary noted irregular transfers in our joint account. Brady was still investigating, but preliminary review suggested funds were moving. I leaned back. Dr. Preston Vaughn. A real man with a title and an address. A person who had been touching my wife, booking hotel rooms, messaging her at 2 a.m. My chest tightened. 25 years reduced to timestamps and receipts. But beneath the pain was something colder information. Evidence. Exactly what I'd paid for. Babe Diane called from the living room. You coming? I closed the laptop. Locked it. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4. Box breathing. Then I walked out and kissed the top of her head. Sorry. Work email? What are we watching? Grey's Anatomy. The one where the surgeon's marriage falls apart. The irony nearly made me laugh. I poured 2 glasses of Pinot Noir, the one she'd insisted we splurge on last month. Sat beside her on the couch we'd picked out together during the remodel. On-screen actors portrayed dramatic betrayal. Beside me, Diane leaned into my shoulder, as she had for decades. Familiar? Automatic? She had no idea I'd just read a report detailing her Monday afternoon in a hotel room with another man. I sipped wine and considered what I was becoming. A man who could sit calmly beside his wife while mentally cataloging evidence. A man who understood that confrontation now would only drive her to a lawyer, drain accounts, erase proof. A man who knew justice required patience. On television, the fictional wife discovered the affair and threw her husband out immediately. Emotional, satisfying, reckless. I took another sip. That's not how you win. Wednesday evening, I went back to the parking garage. I'd thought about it all day through a morning site inspection. where I'd barely registered the contractor's questions through lunch I didn't taste, through an afternoon of reviewing blueprints without seeing them, Vincent's careful attention, the way he'd looked at me when I'd said my name, the deliberate documentation. You don't keep records like that unless you have a reason. I found him on the third level during his shift, guiding an SUV into a tight spot. When the driver left, he turned and saw me. No surprise crossed his face, like he'd been expecting this. Before I reveal what he told me in that bar, I need to ask you something. Type yes in the comments if you want to know the truth about Vincent. Type no if you think some secrets should stay buried. I need to see you're still here. Quick reminder. This story includes some dramatized details for storytelling purposes. If that's not for you, no hard feelings if you exit now. But if you're staying, buckle up. We need to talk, I said. Not here, somewhere private. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. There's a bar 3 blocks east. Murphy's. I'm off in 20 minutes. Murphy's was the kind of dive that had probably looked the same since the 70s. Dim lighting, scarred wooden bar, Rainier beer signs, and the smell of decades of cigarette smoke baked into everything despite the smoking ban. A handful of regulars hunched over drinks, minds their own business. We took a booth in the back. Both ordered beer. Neither of us touched it. I hired a private investigator, I said without preamble. He confirmed everything you showed me. The affair, the timeline, everything. I leaned forward. But what I don't understand is why you told me in the first place. You don't know me. You could have just let it happen. Stayed out of it. Vincent was quiet for a long time. His hands rested on the table, weathered and scarred working hands. His jaw worked like he was chewing words, trying to figure out which ones to spit out. I could have, he finally said. Part of me wanted to. Part of me thought maybe you deserved it, the perfect life falling apart. Why would I deserve it? Because you got everything I didn't. He met my eyes. But then I watched you. Really watched you. And I realized you didn't know. About any of it. The affair. The other thing. What other thing? Vincent reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. Old, creased at the edges, colors faded. He set it on the table between us. A young Asian woman, maybe early 20s, holding a baby. Beside her stood a white man in his 30s, suit and tie, hand resting on her shoulder, but not quite touching the child. I looked at the man's face. The eyes, my father's eyes. The floor dropped out from under me. His name was Thomas Thornton, Vincent said quietly. 58 years ago, he had an affair with my mother while on business in Sacramento. She was a translator at a conference. He was married, had a 2-year-old son back in Seattle. Me. He'd had me. He left before I was born. Never came back. Never sent money. Nothing. Vincent's voice was flat, decades of pain compressed into monotone. My mother raised me alone. Worked 3 jobs. Never told me his name until I was 15. When I finally tracked him down and showed up at his office, you know what he said? I couldn't speak. He said, I have a family. I have a son. You're a mistake. Don't come back here. If you tell him, I'll destroy you and your mother. Vincent's hands clenched. So I didn't. For 43 years I kept that secret. My mind raced. My father, the man who'd taught me to throw a football, who'd come to every Little League game, who'd worked overtime to pay for college, had done this. Had another son he'd threatened into silence. How did you find me? I managed. Vincent pulled out another document. A DNA lab report. My name at the top. His at the bottom. Probability of half-sibling relationship 99.97%. 3 years ago, I took a DNA sample from a coffee cup you left at a construction site. I was a licensed private investigator back then, mostly retired now, but I still had connections. Once I confirmed it, He trailed off. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront you. Part of me wanted to see if your perfect life was really perfect. Part of me just wanted to protect you from getting hurt the way I did. So you took a job at the parking garage 6 months ago, after I'd watched you for a while, learned your routine, your wife's routine. His expression darkened. 4 months ago, I saw her with Preston. I recognized the signs, the looking over shoulders, the quick touches, the practiced way they moved together. I've done enough domestic surveillance to know what cheating looks like, and you kept watching. I kept records, photos, timestamps, because I thought if it came to it, you'd need evidence, the kind that holds up. He paused. And because I knew what it felt like to be lied to about family, I couldn't let her do that to you without you knowing. My brother. This stranger was my brother. Brady Merrick, I said slowly. The PI I hired. Is he my son? Vincent's mouth twisted. When you called looking for an investigator, I told him to take your case, to do it right, to help you the way I couldn't help myself all those years ago. We sat in silence. Two men who shared DNA and nothing else, connected by a father who'd failed us both in different ways. I'm sorry, Vincent finally said, for all of it, for how you found out, don't. I cut him off. You gave me the truth. That's more than he ever did for either of us. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or the beginning of understanding that we were on the same side. He cleared his throat. There's something else. Brady found it in his preliminary investigation. What? His money. Your wife and Preston, they're not just having an affair. They're moving money. Significant amounts. From your joint accounts into something else. My blood went cold. How much? Joe Brady's still tracking it. But based on what he's seen so far, Vincent met my eyes. Enough that this isn't just about betrayal anymore. It's fraud. And just like that, everything changed again. This wasn't just my wife cheating. It was something much worse. Thursday evening, Vincent asked me to come to his apartment. There's something you need to see, he said on the phone, voice measured. Not urgent, controlled. The kind of tone that meant bad news was coming, but it would be delivered carefully. I'd already had enough bad news for one lifetime. His place was in Capitol Hill, an old brick building squeezed between coffee shops and vintage stores. 3rd floor. No elevator. The hallway smelled of garlic and damp carpet. Vincent opened the door before I knocked. Come in. I stepped inside and froze. The wall opposite the entrance was covered floor to ceiling. Photographs. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Surveillance shots, some grainy, some crisp. Diane's face appeared over and over, entering hotels, sitting in cafes, laughing, touching a man's arm, getting into cars I didn't recognize. Between the photos were printed bank statements, business registrations, and timeline charts connected with red string. In the center was an 8x10 photo of Dr. Preston Vaughn in surgical scrubs, smiling easily at the camera. Jesus, I whispered. Vincent closed the door. I know how it looks. But this is how investigations work. You map it until the whole pattern shows. I moved closer, drawn to the upper left corner of the wall. February 14th. Valentine's Day. Diane entering the Fairmont Olympic Hotel at 2:17 p.m. Another photo of her leaving at 5:43 p.m. 3.5 hours. I had been in Redmond that afternoon. Site inspection. I'd texted her around 6 asking about dinner. She'd said she was exhausted and wanted takeout. She'd been with him. 8 months, Vincent said quietly. I've documented 6, but Brady traced it back further. Valentine's Day is the first confirmed hotel visit. 8 months of lies. 8 months of goodnight kisses that tasted like betrayal. My eyes followed the timeline. March 7th, parking garage. March 23rd, downtown restaurant. April 9th, another hotel. May 2nd, her car outside his condo for 4 hours during a board meeting. The pattern repeated with precision. Then I noticed the business documents pinned near the center. What Summit Healthcare Partners, LLC? I asked. Vincent stepped beside me. Registered March 20th. Co-signed by Diane Thornton and Preston Vaughn. My stomach tightened. On paper, it's a medical equipment supplier, he said. They do sell some equipment legitimate enough to pass inspection, but the pricing is inflated. A handful of small clinics are involved. He handed me bank statements. Transfers. 5,000, 12,000, 8,000, 15,000. Over and over, from an account number I recognized. Our joint savings, how much I asked. 180,000 over 6 months. Small increments to avoid detection. Together, it adds up. $180,000. Gone. There's more, Vincent said. He showed me news articles and court records. Preston has done this 3 times before. Portland, 2019. San Francisco, 2021. Denver, 2022. Same model. He pointed at a chart. He targets hospital administrators, married women between 45 and 50, women with assets, inheritances, joint accounts. He seduces them, convinces them to form a business partnership, creates a clean-looking LLC, slowly drains funds, then relocates before anyone pieces it together. Why hasn't anyone stopped him? Because they're ashamed. To expose him, they'd have to admit the affair. Risk careers, risk marriages. He keeps each case under major felony thresholds when possible, and he makes every woman feel chosen. I stared at the list of cities. Portland, San Francisco, Denver, Seattle, a pattern. Who were they? I asked. I don't have all the names. But this one, he handed me a card. Dr. Audrey Kingsley, San Francisco. She was victim number 2. She's also his ex-wife. He married one early on, before he refined the process. She lost her job when the affair surfaced. He drained a $400,000 inheritance before disappearing. Vincent met my eyes. She's been waiting for someone to stop him. When I explained your situation, she agreed to talk. She's flying in tonight. When? Tomorrow, if you want. I turned back to the wall. A recent photo caught my attention. Diane in a cafe last week laughing. Preston leaning forward, intent on her face. She looked alive, happy. She had no idea. She doesn't know, does she? I asked. Almost certainly not, Vincent replied. That's his skill. He makes every woman believe she's the exception, that what they have is rare. I thought about Diane defending him at dinner, about the way she said his name, about how convinced she must be that this was love. She was a victim, like Audrey Kingsley, like the others. But that didn't erase what she'd done to our marriage, or the money, or the deception. I turned to Vincent, my brother, a man I'd known for less than a week, but who now stood at the center of this unraveling. Set up the meeting with Audrey Kingsley, I said. Tomorrow. He nodded. I want to know everything. Friday morning I called my sister. Bryn, I need your help. Legal help. Silence. Bryn Whitmore didn't do silence. 25 years as a divorce attorney had trained her to fill every pause with strategy. But this time she was quiet for 3 long seconds. Come to my office, she said at last. Now. Her office sat on the 10th floor of a downtown high-rise overlooking Elliott Bay. Corner suite, expensive furniture, diplomas and bar certifications framed along one wall, The kind of office you earn after decades of winning custody wars and dismantling joint assets. She closed the door behind me. Bryn was 4 years older, sharp-featured gray threading through her dark hair, gray she'd stopped dyeing years ago. Gray makes opposing counsel underestimate me, she used to say. Sit, she said now. Talk. So I did. I told her everything. The parking garage footage. Vincent, the half-brother I never knew existed, born from our father's affair 58 years ago. The wall of surveillance photos. 8 months of lies. Preston Vaughan's pattern of seduction and financial manipulation in 4 cities. The LLC Summit Healthcare Partners, co-signed by my wife and her lover. $180,000 siphoned from our joint account in small, deliberate transfers. Bryn didn't interrupt. Her face moved through shock anger, then settled into the cold focus I'd seen in courtrooms. When I finished, she said one word: bastards. Then she opened her laptop. Here's where you stand legally, she said. You have grounds for at-fault divorce based on adultery. Washington is technically no fault, but documented adultery still influences asset division in certain contexts. The financial transfers strengthen your position significantly. And if that LLC involved interstate electronic transactions, we're looking at potential federal wire fraud. What are my options? She didn't hesitate. Monday morning, we file for divorce. We cite adultery and financial misconduct. At the same time, we file an emergency motion to freeze all joint accounts. That prevents her from moving or hiding additional funds. She paused, studying me. What do you want, Caleb? Not the legal answer, the real one. I'd already decided. I want the house. I want every dollar back. And I want her to understand exactly what she destroyed. Bryn's gaze sharpened. You're not asking for fairness. I'm asking for precision. She smiled slightly. Good. She pulled out a legal pad. Step 1, documentation. Every report from your PI, every surveillance photo, every financial statement, hotel receipts, time-stamped evidence. We build a case she cannot spin. Vincent's been documenting for 6 months. Excellent. She continued writing. Step 2, emergency account freeze. Once approved, and with this evidence, it will be she cannot access funds without court authorization. She tapped her pen thoughtfully. Step 3, the house. Did Dad ever update the mortgage structure after Mom died? No. Why? She turned her laptop toward me. Because he inserted a protection clause when you refinanced. If the marriage dissolves under proven adultery, his estate retains an interest in the property. That protects your equity. She forfeits her claim. I stared at her. You're serious. Dad had seen too many men get wiped out in divorce. He drafted it to shield you. She gave me a look. Yes, ironic, considering his own history. But he protected you. Another layer I hadn't known existed. Step 4. Bryn said we leverage the LLC fraud. Participation in financial misconduct can shift asset division heavily in your favor. She didn't just cheat. She diverted joint funds. Courts take that seriously. Will it hold? With this level of documentation, yes. Especially if the FBI opens a file. What about Evan? Her expression softened. He's 20. No custody issues. You tell him when you're ready. Legally, he's separate. I nodded, keeping the DNA question I'd been wrestling with to myself. One battle at a time, Caleb Bryn said quietly, leaning forward. Once we file, this ends. Completely. No reconciliation window. Are you certain? My marriage ended 8 months ago, I replied. I just learned about it last week. She held my gaze, then nodded. Then we finish it properly. She reached for her phone. Judge Williams owes me a favor. I'll secure an emergency hearing Monday afternoon for temporary orders. That gives us the weekend to finalize everything. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. This will get ugly. Diane will fight. Preston will hire counsel the moment he senses pressure. If federal investigators step in, it escalates quickly. I have Vincent. I have Brady. I have 6 months of documentation. And now I have you. That earned a different smile, less attorney, more sister. Yeah, she said. You do. When I stepped out of her office, my phone buzzed. Vincent. Audrey Kingsley confirmed for tomorrow, 2 p.m. Ballard Cafe. She has evidence. A lot. I texted back, I'll be there. 3 days ago, I'd been shopping for my son's birthday present, believing I was in a solid marriage. I'd been blind, comfortable, trusting. Now I had a private investigator, a half-brother with a wall of evidence, an ex-wife of my wife's lover flying in with documentation, and the best divorce attorney in the city drafting emergency motions. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was building a case. Saturday afternoon, I met Dr. Audrey Kingsley at a coffee shop in Ballard. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table away from the windows. 47, polished in that professional way that spoke of years climbing corporate ladders. Dark suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back neat. But it was her eyes that told the real story, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix, the kind of exhaustion that came from surviving something that should have destroyed you. Mr. Thornton. She stood as I approached, offered her hand. Firm grip, steady eye contact. Whatever Preston had done to her, she hadn't let it break her completely. Thank you for agreeing to meet, I said, sitting across from her. Thank you for reaching out. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup like she needed the warmth. When Vincent called and explained the situation, said Preston was working the same pattern again in Seattle, I knew I had to help. Tell me what happened between you and Preston. She took a slow breath, organizing thoughts she'd probably organized 1,000 times before. We met 7 years ago. I was CFO at Oregon University Medical Hospital. Preston was the new hire, brilliant cardiac surgeon, charming, younger than most department heads. He made an impression immediately. Her mouth tightened. My marriage was struggling. 25 years, 2 kids already in college. My husband and I were basically roommates who shared a mortgage. The classic midlife crisis setup. I knew that feeling. The distance that grew so gradually, you didn't notice until you were strangers living under the same roof. Preston saw that. Audrey continued. Or maybe he engineered it, I don't know anymore. He made me feel understood, important. Like I mattered beyond budget spreadsheets and board meetings. The affair started within 3 months. She said it clinically, like reading a medical chart. Detached. The only way to tell the story without drowning in it. 6 months in, he pitched the business idea. A medical equipment company, we'd source better quality supplies at lower costs, improve hospital procurement, make millions in the process. He called it a partnership between clinical expertise and financial management. Made it sound revolutionary. And how much did you invest? $400,000. My mother's inheritance. Everything she'd left me. Her jaw clenched. The equipment was real. The company was legitimate on paper. But the prices Preston charged were inflated by 3, sometimes 400%. And the contracts he negotiated somehow always seemed to benefit his other ventures. When did you realize? Too late. By the time I started asking questions, Preston had already structured everything to look like I was the one manipulating hospital contracts. When the internal investigation started, he had his lawyers ready. They convinced the board it was mutual misconduct, that I was equally guilty. I had to sign an NDA to avoid criminal charges. Her hands trembled slightly around the cup. My husband filed for divorce when everything came out. The hospital terminated my position. I lost my job, my marriage, my reputation, and $400,000. Preston moved to San Francisco with a clean record and a new position, and did it again. See, at least twice more that I can confirm. San Francisco, then Denver. Maybe others I don't know about. She pulled out a folder from her bag. I've been building a file. Breaking my NDA could cost me legally, but I'm tired of watching him destroy people. She opened the folder. Inside were printouts, LinkedIn profiles, news articles, court records, financial documents. Photos of 3 women besides herself, all professional, well-dressed 40-something. All with that same tired look in their eyes. San Francisco, hospital administrator. Divorced, lost approximately $300,000. Denver, another hospital administrator. Same story, $250,000 gone. And now your wife in Seattle. The pattern was crystal clear when laid out like this. Hospital administrators, late 40s, married, assets. The same script playing out city after city, victim after victim. Why hasn't anyone stopped him? I asked. Shame, Audrey said simply. These women, myself included, would have to admit to affairs, risk what's left of our careers and reputations. The NDAs are ironclad. The hospitals want to avoid scandal, and Preston's smart about keeping amounts below felony thresholds in most jurisdictions. She leaned forward. But if we could get multiple victims to testify together, build a federal wire fraud case instead of local criminal charges, maybe we could actually stop him. I want to do more than stop him, I said. I want to catch him in the act. Get him on record admitting what he's done. My wife doesn't know I know about the affair. She thinks her secret is safe. If I could get her to cooperate, wear a wire record, Preston confessing to the fraud, she'd have to flip on him, Audrey said slowly. Betray someone she thinks she's in love with. Why would she do that? Because I'll give her a choice. Help us take Preston down or go down as his accomplice. She's signed documents, co-signed the LLC, participated in fund transfers. Legally, she's as guilty as he is. Audrey studied me with those tired, sharp eyes. You're not doing this just to save your marriage. My marriage ended 8 months ago. I'm doing this because he needs to be stopped. Because you deserve justice. Because those other women deserve to know they weren't alone. And because my wife deserves to understand exactly what kind of man she's been protecting. Audrey was quiet for a long moment. Then she slid the folder across the table. I'll testify, she said. I'll break my NDA. I'll contact the other victims and see if they'll come forward. I don't care about the legal consequences anymore. I just want Preston Vaughn facing real justice for once in his life. I looked at the folder. 4 women's faces staring up at me from the documents. 4 lives dismantled by the same man who was currently dismantling mine. He will, I said. We'll make sure of it. Because this wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This wasn't about hurt feelings or betrayed trust or 25 years wasted. This was about stopping a predator, and we finally had an army strong enough to do it. The Seattle Grace Hospital annual fundraising gala was the kind of night where the city's medical elite gathered beneath crystal chandeliers to applaud their own brilliance. Diane had been excited for weeks. I had been preparing for 3 days. She bought a red silk dress that cost more than my weekly paycheck. Scheduled a hair appointment. Talked endlessly about board members, wealthy donors, and department heads angling for promotion. That morning I rented a tuxedo. The clerk asked if it was for a wedding. Something like that, I told him. Now we stood in the Fairmont Olympics Grand Ballroom, the same hotel where she'd spent Monday afternoons in room 847 with Preston Vaughn, and I watched her perform. She glided between hospital administrators, laughing lightly, kissing cheeks, embodying the devoted executive's wife. She was still the woman who had caught my eye 25 years ago, still beautiful, still magnetic, still capable of lighting up a room. I just hadn't realized that glow included 8 months of betrayal with a cardiac surgeon. Vincent was outside in a valet uniform arranged through an old private investigator contact. Bryn stood near the bar in black, poised and watchful, playing my supportive sister while serving as legal witness. Under my rented tuxedo shirt pressed flat against my chest, a recording device captured everything. Washington was a one-party consent state. Every word spoken tonight would be documented. "There's Dr. Vaughn," Diane said, touching my arm. Her eyes had already found him across the room. They always did. "I should introduce you. He's been incredibly helpful with board politics. Lead the way." She laced her fingers through mine, her wedding ring flashing beneath the chandeliers, and guided me through the crowd. Preston stood at the bar among surgeons in tailored suits, radiating the confidence of men who held beating hearts in their hands. He was tall, fit, composed, the kind of doctor patients trusted instantly. His gaze found Diane before we reached him. I saw it recognition heat, then the swift shift to professional neutrality. He was practiced. "Comfortable," Dr. Vaughn, Diane said warmly. "This is my husband, Caleb Thornton." He extended his hand. "Mr. Thornton, a pleasure." His grip was firm. His eyes assessed me in seconds, construction worker mid-50s, not part of this world. I watched him dismiss me as harmless. "Diane speaks highly of you," I said evenly. "She's invaluable to the hospital." He replied, smiling at her in a way that suggested something private. "I'm sure." I let silence linger. "She's told me so much about you these past few months. I feel like I already know you." A flicker crossed his face. "Your work," I continued casually. "Your investment advice. Your ventures. Summit Healthcare Partners. Diane mentioned your co-founders." The color drained from him. Diane's grip tightened. "Caleb. I've been studying how that company operates," I said, lowering my voice slightly. "Pricing structures, vendor contracts, transfer patterns. Construction teaches you to respect documentation." "I don't know what you're implying," Preston said. "I know everything," I replied quietly. "Every meeting, every transfer, every hotel room. Fairmont Olympic. Room 847. Monday afternoons, 2.5 hours on average. Summit Healthcare Partners, registered March 20th. Co-signed by you and my wife. $180,000 transferred from our joint accounts in 6 months." Diane made a small, strangled sound. Preston's charm dissolved. His eyes hardened. "You don't know what you're dealing with." "Try me." He leaned closer, voice sharp. "I have friends, board members, city council. I'm a respected cardiac surgeon. You're a construction worker." His lip curled faintly. "Who do you think they'll believe?" I smiled. Because he had just handed me exactly what I needed, recorded, preserved. "Let's find out," I said. Then I raised my voice just enough for nearby guests to glance over. "Very nice meeting you, Dr. Vaughn. Enjoy the evening." I turned and walked away without looking back, leaving them frozen beneath crystal light and polished marble. Behind me, panic spread in subtle ripples. Vincent stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watchful. He caught my eye and gave a single nod. Phase 1 was complete. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the ballroom's music muffled behind heavy doors. My pulse finally began to slow. Everything had unfolded exactly as planned. Diane followed minutes later, her heels striking the pavement sharply. "What have you done?" she demanded, voice trembling. "Nothing," I said calmly. "Yet." The car waited at the curb. Vincent opened the door for her with professional neutrality, as though he were just another valet, not a witness to a collapsing marriage. Inside, the silence was suffocating. "You're embarrassing yourself," she hissed. "You have no idea how powerful Preston is." "I'm aware," I replied. She stared at me, searching for uncertainty. She found none. "Caleb," she said, softer now. "We can talk about this at home." "We are talking." Her mask slipped just slightly. Fear crept into her eyes. What she didn't know was that the device under my shirt was still recording. Every accusation, every threat, every admission. The legal battle ahead would not rely on rumors or whispered suspicions. It would rest on evidence, financial records, corporate filings, transaction logs, and now recorded words spoken in anger. She thought tonight had been about humiliation. It hadn't. It had been about leverage. Vincent handed me the car keys at the valet stand. His eyes asked a silent question. "You okay?" I gave him a single nod. "It's done." Diane followed me across the parking garage without speaking. Her heels clicked against concrete, echoing in the cavernous space. Still in shock, maybe, or already calculating her next defense. I opened the passenger door for her, 25 years of muscle memory, and she slid in mechanically, that red dress pooling around her legs. I closed the door, walked around to the driver's side, got in, started the engine. The silence between us was already suffocating. I pulled out of the Fairmont's garage and onto the wet Seattle streets. Rain had started while we were inside, soft at first, then building to a steady rhythm against the windshield. Diane sat rigid beside me, staring straight ahead, hands folded in her lap. She didn't speak until we merged onto UI-5 heading north toward Bellevue. When she finally found her voice, it came out tight, controlled, still trying to manage the situation. What the hell just happened back there? That was me being honest for the first time in a week. "You embarrassed me in front of—" "I embarrassed you." My hands tightened on the wheel. "That's really what you're concerned about right now. Kroglib, whatever you think you know, stop." The word came out harder than I'd intended. "Don't insult me with denials." Silence. Just rain and road noise and the sound of 25 years cracking apart. "I saw you," I said quietly. "At the parking garage. Saturday, 8 days ago. With him." "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled onto the shoulder. Right there on I-5, rain-pouring traffic rushing past. Put the car in park. Turned to face her directly. "Diane, I have video. 8 months of surveillance. Hotel check-ins, financial records, LLC documents with your signature. I have everything." The color drained from her face. All that careful control evaporated. "Oh God. How long?" My voice stayed level, clinical. "Before you insult me with explanations, just tell me. How long have you been sleeping with him?" She stared at her hands. Her wedding ring caught light from passing headlights. 8 months, she whispered. "Since February." "Valentine's Day. How romantic." "Caleb, please." "And the money." "The $180,000 you stole." He said it was an investment. I pulled Audrey's folder from inside my jacket. Dropped it in her lap. "He's a professional con artist. Open it." Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. I watched her face as she read. Watched the horror settle in. Photos of 3 other women. Portland, San Francisco, Denver. All hospital administrators. All married. All mid-40s. Same pattern. Same promises. Same lies. "No, this can't be. Preston wouldn't." I showed her my phone. Screenshots Brady had recovered from cloud backups. Preston's messages to previous victims. "You're the only one who understands me. We can have a real future together. Just trust me with this investment." Word for word identical to messages he'd sent her. She scrolled through them, hands shaking. I watched the fantasy shatter. Watched her realize she'd never been special. Just another mark in a pattern going back years. He doesn't love me. Hollow. Broken. No. He never did. No. I destroyed everything for... Her voice cracked. "Oh God. Oh God, what have I done?" She started crying. Deep, wrenching sobs. I felt nothing. "I want you out of the house by tomorrow." "Well, I've accepted." I filed for separation. Bryn's my attorney. Monday the court freezes our accounts. Divorce papers come next week. "You can't just..." I can. You committed adultery, financial fraud, theft, 8 months of lies. I paused. Maybe longer. She went very still. What do you mean? Evan. I kept my eyes on the road as I pulled back into traffic. He's not mine, is he? Silence. I'm type O, you're type B, Evan's type A. That's genetically impossible if I'm his biological father. Caleb, please. Who was it? Someone before we married. During does it even matter anymore? She didn't answer, just kept crying. 20 minutes later, I pulled into our driveway. The house I'd bought. Renovated. Made into a home. The house where I'd raised another man's son. Get out! She stumbled from the car, mascara running that expensive red dress soaked from rain. I watched her fumble with her keys disappear through the front door. I sat there, engine idling, rain drumming on the roof. Tomorrow, everything would change. Monday, the legal machinery would start. By next week, divorce papers would be served. By next month, it would be over. But tonight, I just sat in my driveway and felt the weight of 25 years turning to ash. Not satisfaction, not victory, just a hollow, aching emptiness where my marriage used to be. The DNA test results arrived Monday morning via encrypted email. I sat in Bryn's office staring at the laptop screen, reading the lines over and over. Medical terminology, lab certification numbers, charts showing genetic markers that meant nothing to me, and at the bottom, in bold, probability of paternity, 0.00%. Caleb. Bryn's voice came from somewhere far away. I closed the laptop, sat back, looked at my hands. He's not my son. 20 years. Every birthday party where I'd carried the cake while everyone sang. Every baseball game where I'd taught him to swing level, keep his eye on the ball. Every parent-teacher conference where teachers told me what a good kid he was, how proud I must be. Every time he'd said, "I love you, Dad," before bed. I'm so sorry, Bryn said quietly. Are you? I stood, walked to the window. Downtown Seattle stretched below buildings and traffic and people living their normal Monday mornings. Because I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel right now. However you feel is valid. The blood types, I said, still staring out the window. I looked it up last week. Type O and type B can't produce type A. It's genetically impossible. I turned to face her. 20 years of diapers and homework and parent-teacher conferences. 20 years teaching him to ride a bike, drive a car, be a good man. And none of it was real. Stop. Bryn's voice was sharp. She stood, came around her desk. Don't do that. Don't let Diane's lie poison what you built with that boy. It was built on your choice to love him, to show up, to be there. She pointed at the closed laptop. That test tells you about biology. It doesn't tell you about fatherhood. You've been his father in every way that matters. But he's not. He's your son, Caleb. You raised him. Biology doesn't determine that. Love does. Time does. Presence does. Her eyes were fierce. That number on the screen, that's not 0. What you've given him for 20 years, that's everything. I sank back into the chair. Felt something in my chest crack open. How do I tell him? My voice came out rough. That his whole life is built on his mother's lie. Bryn sat on the edge of her desk. Does he need to know right now? He deserves the truth. He's 20, away at college. Senior year, the most critical time for his development, his career plans, his sense of identity. She paused. Telling him now would destroy him. So I just lie by omission, Haikchung. No, you wait. Until after graduation. Until he's stable, employed, ready to process something this devastating. Until you're ready to have that conversation. I thought about Evan. engineering senior, job interviews coming up, his whole future ahead of him. We wait, I said finally, and we protect that choice. Bryn pulled up a document on her computer. Non-disclosure clause in the divorce settlement. Diane is prohibited from telling Evan about the paternity. If she violates it, she faces financial penalties and contempt charges. That feels wrong, like I'm covering up the truth. You're not covering it up. You're controlling when and how Evan learns something that will fundamentally reshape his understanding of himself. Bryn turned the screen toward me. You can tell him later, when he's ready, when you're ready. But Diane doesn't get to weaponize that truth in anger or spite. You decide, not her. I stared at the clause, read it 3 times. On my terms, I said, not hers. Exactly. Bryn opened another folder. Let's talk asset division. She walked me through it. Clinical, professional, 25 years reduced to spreadsheets. The house $800,000 in equity would go to me. Dad's infidelity clause. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father, who'd had his own affair that produced Vincent, had still thought to protect me from the same fate. Retirement accounts $1.4 million total. I'd keep $1.2 million. Diane would keep only her own 401k, about $200,000. She'd forfeited the joint savings through fraud and theft. My construction business, $500,000 in value, stayed entirely mine. Built before and during the marriage, but she'd forfeited any claim through adultery. No alimony. At-fault divorce plus financial fraud meant she walked away with almost nothing. Ma, the emergency hearing is at 2, Bryn said. Judge Williams will freeze the joint accounts today. Diane won't be able to touch another dollar without court permission. And the divorce papers, served by end of week. She paused. This is really happening, Caleb. Once we file, once these accounts freeze, there's no going back. Are you ready? I thought about Evan away at college, unaware that his family was imploding. Unaware that his mother had lied about his paternity for 20 years. Unaware that I was fighting to protect him from truths he wasn't ready to handle. I thought about Diane, who'd stolen 20 years of truth from both of us. Who'd built our family on lies I was still uncovering. I thought about Preston Vaughn, who'd destroyed multiple lives for money and ego, and would have walked away clean if I hadn't stopped him. I'm ready, I said. Let's end this. Bryn slid the papers across her desk. I picked up the pen and signed. Monday evening, I sat alone in the house that was finally just mine. The silence felt different now. Not empty, just quiet. Diane had been gone since Saturday night. Her things were still upstairs, clothes, makeup, shoes, but she was gone. Staying at some hotel downtown, probably. Using the credit card I hadn't frozen yet. That would change tomorrow morning. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Voicemail notification. Diane's number. I stared at it for a long moment. Debated not listening. But curiosity, or maybe strategy, won out. I hit play. At first I thought she was calling me. Then I heard the rustling sounds. Muffled movement. The hollow acoustic of a phone in a purse or pocket. Pocket dial. She'd called me by accident. And then I heard her voice trembling, talking to someone else. Preston, please pick up, please. My hand tightened on the phone. Ringing sounds through the recording. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a click. What? Preston's voice came through cold. Flat. Nothing like the charming surgeon who'd smiled at me at the gala. Oh, thank God. Diane's voice was thick with tears. Caleb, he knows everything. About us, about the money, everything. He froze the accounts, filed for divorce. I told you not to call me. Preston, what do we do? I don't know what to... We. His voice turned sharp. There is no we anymore, Diane. Silence. Then Diane's voice, smaller, broken. What do you mean? I mean, you were careless. You let yourself get caught. I can't be associated with any of this. But you said we'd start over together. California. The practice we'd build. I said a lot of things. Matter of fact, like he was discussing weather. Look, this was fun while it lasted, but you've become a liability. A liability. Her voice cracked. Preston, I left everything for you. My marriage, the LLC is in your name. The transfers came from your accounts. Your signature is on everything. Each word was a door slamming shut. Good luck explaining that to your lawyer. You can't just, Preston, please. Watch me. Click. The line went dead. For several seconds, there was nothing but the sound of Diane breathing. Then she started sobbing. Deep, wrenching sounds that might have moved me 2 weeks ago. Now I just listened clinically. Evidence. Every word was evidence. Oh, God, she whispered to herself through the tears. He never loved me. He was just using me all along. Oh, God, what have I done? The voicemail cut off. Time limit reached. I stood in my kitchen phone, still pressed to my ear, staring at nothing. Then I played it again, listened to the whole thing a second time. Preston's cold dismissal. Diane's realization hitting in real time. The confirmation that everything Audrey had told me was true. Preston Vaughn was a professional. He'd done this before. He'd do it again, unless we stopped him. I saved the voicemail. Forwarded it to myself via email. Backed it up 3 different ways. This was exactly what we needed. A knock at the door pulled me out of my thoughts. I opened it to find Vincent holding 2 bags of Chinese takeout. Figured you hadn't eaten, he said, walking past me into the kitchen like he'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. I've been eating. Coffee and rage don't count as a meal. He started unpacking containers. Kung Pao chicken, fried rice, egg rolls. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Since when are you my nutritionist? Since I'm your brother and somebody needs to make sure you don't self-destruct. He grabbed plates from the cabinet, somehow already knew where they were. You look like hell, by the way. Thanks. What are brothers for? We sat at the kitchen table. Vincent handed me a fork. Something happened, he said. Not a question. I pulled out my phone. Diane pocket dialed me about an hour ago. Left a voicemail. I hit play. Vincent's face went darker with every word. By the time Preston said, "Watch me," and hung up, his jaw was clenched tight. "Oh, that son of a bitch," he said quietly. Preston just gift-wrapped us a confession and made Diane desperate. Vincent looked up at me. Desperate people cooperate. That's what I'm counting on. I took a bite of chicken. First real food I'd eaten all day. Give her one more day. Let her realize she's completely alone. Preston's gone. I'm gone. The money's about to be gone. Then we approach her about the wire. You think she'll do it? What choice does she have? I picked up my phone, played the voicemail one more time. Diane's voice. He never loved me. He was just using me. She's finally seeing what we've known all along. Preston Vaughn is a predator, and she was just another mark. Think she'll throw him under the bus? She already has. We just need to make it official. Vincent nodded slowly, picked up his beer. You know what's weird? What? I don't even hate her anymore. I said it before I'd really thought about it. I just feel done. Vincent studied me for a moment, then nodded. That's maturity or exhaustion. Sometimes they're the same thing. My phone buzzed. Text from Bryn. Emergency hearing approved. Accounts frozen as of 8 a.m. tomorrow. She's cut off. I showed Vincent. He raised his beer. To consequences. I picked up mine. To consequences. We clinked bottles. And for the first time in 2 weeks, since that Saturday afternoon in the parking garage when my world had imploded. I almost smiled. Tomorrow we'd approach Diane about cooperation. But tonight, sitting in my kitchen with the brother I never knew I needed eating Chinese food and planning strategic strikes, I felt something shift. Control. It was finally coming back. 2 weeks passed since Preston abandoned her. 2 weeks we let Diane stew in that hotel room, isolated and desperate. Preston's silence confirmed what the voicemail had already proven: he'd discarded her the moment she became a liability. The accounts had been frozen since September 24th. She was living on a credit card that would max out soon, eating room service and searching job sites that wouldn't hire someone whose professional reputation was about to implode. Bryn had been monitoring the situation. "She's desperate enough now," she'd said Tuesday evening. "Time to move." Wednesday morning, the three of us, me, Bryn, and Vincent, arrived at the Courtyard Marriott near Seattle Grace Hospital. Room 314. I knocked. The woman who opened the door was barely recognizable. No makeup. Sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. Hair pulled into a messy bun. Eyes swollen and red from crying. This was the same woman who'd worn that red silk dress to the gala 2 weeks ago, radiant and confident, and completely unaware her world was collapsing. "Caleb," her voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd—" "This isn't a request," I said. She stepped back, letting us in. The hotel room told its own story. Unmade bed. Room service trays stacked on the desk. Laptop open to LinkedIn, and indeed evidence of a desperate job search that wasn't going anywhere. The clinical smell of industrial cleaning products mixed with stale coffee. Bryn walked in first, professional and cold. "I'm Bryn Whitmore, Caleb's sister and attorney. We're here to discuss your options." Diane looked between us, confusion mixing with fear. "My options? You're facing federal wire fraud charges." Bryn's voice was crisp, clinical. "The $180,000 you transferred to Summit Healthcare Partners constitutes federal bank fraud. That's a federal crime. 5 to 10 years in prison if convicted." Diane's legs seemed to give out. She sank onto the unmade bed. "I didn't know. Ignorance isn't a defense. You signed the documents. You executed the transfers. You're an accomplice." Bryn pulled out a folder. "Preston Vaughn has said the same things to 3 other women. Take a look." She handed over Audrey's folder. Diane opened it with shaking hands. I watched her face drain of color as she read. Portland, San Francisco, Denver. 3 women before her. Same pattern. Same lies. Same promises. "Oh, God," she whispered. The FBI is building a case against him," Bryn continued. "They need someone who was involved, someone who can testify." Diane looked up slowly. "You want me to testify against Preston?" "Yeah, we want you to wear a wire," Bryn said. "Get him to admit the fraud on tape, then testify when the case goes to trial. He'll destroy me." I spoke for the first time since entering. "He already destroyed you." My voice was calm, factual. "Not cruel, but not kind either. You lost your husband. You're about to lose your home. Your reputation is gone. Preston doesn't care about you. He hasn't called back because you're no longer useful to him." Diane flinched like I'd slapped her. "Here are your options," Bryn said. "Cooperate and we can keep this quiet. Immunity deal, sealed records, no publicity. You lose Caleb and the house, but you don't lose Evan. You don't go to prison. You get a chance to rebuild some kind of life." She paused, letting that sink in. Or don't cooperate. We prosecute you alongside Preston. You lose everything, including any chance at a relationship with your son." At Evan's name, Diane's head snapped up. "Did you tell him—" "No," I said. Because despite everything, I don't want to destroy my son's life. But if you don't cooperate, if you force us to go to trial, everything becomes public. Evan will know exactly what kind of person his mother is. That's blackmail. That's reality. Bryn cut in. Silence filled the hotel room. Diane looked between us, desperate for a way out that didn't exist. If I do this, she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. Will it change anything between us? No. I kept my voice level. The divorce proceeds as planned. You keep your 401k. You get immunity. That's more than you deserve. More silence. Diane was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. I'll do it, she said. I'll wear the wire. Bryn pulled out paperwork. FBI agent Owen Ramsey will contact you within 24 hours. He'll brief you on the operation. You'll need to contact Preston, arrange a meeting. The wire will record everything. What do I say to him? It's the truth, I said. That you're scared. That I'm threatening you. That you need his help. He's arrogant enough to believe you're still under his control. Diane nodded, hands shaking as she took the immunity agreement from Bryn. I'm sorry, Caleb. Her voice broke. For everything. I never meant for. I stood, headed for the door. Didn't look back. Sorry doesn't fix this, I said. But cooperation might save you. Outside in the hotel corridor, Vincent put a hand on my shoulder. That was brutal. That was necessary, I corrected. He studied me for a moment, nodded slowly. We walked to the elevator in silence. As the doors closed, I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction, not victory, just completion. The legal machinery was in motion now. Diane would cooperate or she'd face consequences alone. Either way, Preston Vaughn's time was running out, and he had no idea the trap was closing around him. Thursday morning, we met at the FBI field office in downtown Seattle. The building was exactly what you'd expect. Sterile, imposing, the kind of place designed to make you feel small and exposed. Security checkpoints, badge scanners, agents moving through hallways with the quiet efficiency of people who'd seen everything. Agent Owen Ramsey looked like he'd seen most of it. Mid-40s, maybe pushing 50. Gray suit, white shirt, dark tie. Eyes that had witnessed too much white-collar crime and stopped being surprised by human greed years ago. We gathered in an interrogation room, me, Diane, and Bryn. Vincent was next door in the observation room, watching through the one-way glass. Diane had barely spoken since agreeing to cooperate yesterday. She sat rigid in the metal chair, hands folded in her lap, looking like someone waiting for execution. Agent Ramsey entered carrying a thick file folder, set it on the table, looked at Diane with those tired eyes. Mrs. Thornton, thank you for agreeing to cooperate. She nodded mutely. Let's clarify the terms, Ramsey said, pulling out papers. You cooperate fully. You wear a wire. You get Dr. Vaughn to admit the fraud on tape. In return, you receive immunity from federal wire fraud prosecution. The charges against you will be dropped. And it'll be sealed. Diane's voice was barely audible. My son won't know. That's between you and your ex-husband. The FBI doesn't disclose case details unless necessary for prosecution. Since you're cooperating, you won't be named as a co-conspirator in public records. You'll be listed as a witness, not a defendant. She looked at me. You'll keep it from Evan. For now, I said. The kid doesn't need details. He knows we're divorcing because of your affair. That's enough. She flinched but didn't argue. Ramsey opened the file folder. Let's talk about Dr. Preston Vaughn's other victims. He spread photos across the table. 5 women, 5 different cities. Hannah Shepard, San Diego 8 years ago. Recently came forward. Dr. Audrey Kingsley, Oregon 7 years ago. Unnamed victim, San Francisco, 6 years ago. Amanda Sutton, Portland, 4 years ago. Valerie Porter, Denver, 3 years ago. And you, Seattle this year. Diane stared at the photos, face draining of color. Over $2 million stolen across 10 years. 4 different hospitals. Identical pattern every time. Ramsey pulled out another document. He even used the same words. He showed Diane a comparison sheet. Messages Preston had sent to each victim. Preston to Audrey. You're the only one who understands me. Preston to Amanda. You're the only one who understands me. Preston to Diane. You're the only one who understands me. Word for word identical. A copy-paste con job. He said I was special, Diane whispered. That he'd never felt this way with anyone. He told all of them the same thing, Ramsey said. Not unkind, but factual. In some cases, word for word. You weren't special, Mrs. Thornton. You were a target who fit his profile. She looked like she might be sick. Here's how this works, Ramsey continued. This afternoon, you'll call Dr. Vaughn. Tell him you're scared, that your husband is threatening you with fraud charges, that you need his help. He'll come to your hotel. Men like him can't resist the opportunity to reassert control. What if he suspects? He won't. You're desperate and frightened. That's exactly what he expects. That's what makes you controllable in his mind. Ramsey leaned forward. Men like Preston Vaughn rely on power dynamics. He thinks you're weak. That's his weakness, underestimating people. He pulled a small device from his briefcase. This is a wire. We'll attach it between your ribs under your shirt. Invisible. You'll meet Preston in your hotel room. FBI agents will be in the adjacent room monitoring everything. Your job is simple. Get him talking about the LLC, the money, his pattern. He'll incriminate himself if he thinks you're still on his side. Diane's hands were shaking. What do I say? The truth. That you're terrified. That you don't know what to do. Ask him for advice. He'll give it, and in doing so, he'll admit to everything. Ramsey slid a phone across the table. Clean phone, untraceable. Call him now. Arrange the meeting. Diane picked it up with trembling fingers. Looked at me one more time. I nodded. She dialed, hit speaker. 4 rings, then Preston's voice irritated. I told you not to call me. Preston, please. Diane's voice broke perfectly. Genuine fear mixed with performance. I need help. Caleb's threatening me with fraud charges. The FBI. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so scared. Silence. I could almost hear him calculating on the other end. And where are you? Hotel near the hospital. Preston, I don't know how to send me the address. I'll come by this afternoon. A pause. But Diane, this is the last time. You need to get your situation under control. I will. I promise. Just please help me figure out what to do. 3 p.m. Don't call me again until then. Click. Diane set the phone down, hands still shaking. He's coming. Good. Ramsey stood. Let's get you wired. After the briefing outside in the FBI parking garage, Bryn pulled me aside. You know this might not work, she said quietly. Preston's smart. He might not say anything incriminating. He will, I said. His arrogance will bury him. He thinks Diane's weak. He thinks she'll crumble. He has no idea she's already cooperating. And if he doesn't incriminate himself, I looked back at the FBI building. Then we have Audrey's testimony, Amanda's, Valerie's, and Diane's immunity means she'll testify too. Preston Vaughn is finished either way. But today just determines how quickly. Bryn studied me for a moment, nodded. Then let's make sure it's quick. That afternoon at 2:50 p.m., I sat in room 316 watching a video monitor. On the screen, Diane paced back and forth in room 314, her hands shaking. She'd been in there alone for 10 minutes, waiting. Agent Ramsey stood beside me, one hand on his earpiece, his voice barely a whisper into his mic. "Remember what we discussed, Mrs. Thornton? Let him talk. Don't push. Just listen." On the screen, Diane nodded. She looked exhausted. The red dress from the gala was long gone. Today she wore jeans and a plain sweater. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Vincent stood behind me, arms crossed. Bryn was beside him, taking notes on her tablet. None of us spoke. At 2:55 p.m., there was a knock on the door of room 314. Diane jumped. Her hand went to her ribs where the recording device sat hidden beneath her sweater. Then she walked to the door and opened it. Preston Vaughn stepped inside. He wore surgical scrubs under a jacket he must have come straight from the hospital. His expression was cold, impatient. "This better be important, Diane. I've got surgery in 2 hours." Diane closed the door behind him. Her voice was small, frightened. "Caleb knows everything." Preston's jaw tightened. He glanced around the room as if checking for cameras. Then he turned back to her. "What do you mean, everything?" "He knows about us. He knows about the money. He showed me files, photos. He says you've done this before." "He's lying." "To other women? In Portland, San Francisco, Denver?" Preston's face darkened. He stepped closer to Diane, his voice dropping. "Your husband is fabricating stories because he's angry. That's what bitter men do when they lose." Diane shook her head. She was crying now. "He froze our accounts, Preston. He filed for separation. He says I helped you steal money, that I signed documents. It was a legitimate business investment. That made me part of a fraud scheme." Preston grabbed her arm. Not hard, but firm enough to make her flinch. "Listen to me. Summit Healthcare Partners was a real company. We sold medical equipment at competitive prices. If your husband is trying to turn that into something criminal, he's desperate." Diane pulled her arm free. Her voice broke. "Then why did you stop answering my calls?" Preston went still. "Why did you tell me you loved me, and then disappear the second Caleb confronted you at the gala?" "I needed time to think." "You needed time to run." Preston's mask slipped. "Just for a second. Long enough for me to see the man beneath the surgeon's confidence. The con artist. The predator. What do you want from me, Diane?" "I want the truth." Her voice was shaking, but she held his gaze. "How long were you planning this? How many women have you done this to?" Preston exhaled slowly. He walked to the window, his back to her. When he spoke again, his tone was different. Colder. More calculated. "You weren't the first, and you won't be the last." In room 316, Ramsey leaned forward. Vincent's hand tightened on my shoulder. On the screen, Diane stood frozen. "What?" Preston turned to face her. "I've been doing this for 10 years. Portland, San Francisco, Denver. You were just easier than most. Married, middle-aged, lonely. You had access to money, and you wanted to believe someone still saw you." Diane's face went white. You used me. I gave you what you wanted. I made you feel special, and you paid for that privilege. That's how it works." "You told me you loved me." Preston laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. "I told you what you needed to hear. Just like I told Amanda in Portland. Just like I told Valerie in Denver. Women like you are easy, Diane. You're so desperate for attention that you'll sign anything, transfer anything, believe anything." He stepped closer to her. And when your husband comes after me with lawyers, I'll remind him that every transaction was consensual. Every document has your signature. You're not a victim. You're a co-conspirator." Diane took a step back. Her hand went to her chest where the recording device was hidden. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You're a monster." Preston shrugged. "I'm a businessman. And if you're smart, you'll keep your mouth shut about this. Because if you talk to the FBI, you go down with me." He turned and walked to the door. He opened it, paused, and looked back at her one last time. "Consider this a lesson." Then he was gone. In room 314, Diane collapsed onto the bed. Her shoulders shook as she cried. In room 316, Agent Ramsey took off his headphones. He looked at me, at Bryn, at Vincent. "We got him." He turned to one of the other agents in the room. "Prepare an arrest warrant. We'll pick him up tomorrow morning at Seattle Grace. I want it public. I want every doctor, every nurse, every patient in that hospital to see him in handcuffs." He looked back at the monitor where Diane was still crying. "Send someone in to check on her. Tell her she did well." Bryn closed her tablet. Vincent let out a long breath. I stood up. Ramsey turned off the monitor. He looked at me. "We'll arrest him tomorrow, at the hospital, in front of his colleagues." He paused. "Do you want to be there?" I nodded. "Yes, I do. Friday morning, 7 o'clock. I stood in the parking lot of Seattle Grace Hospital, a cup of takeout coffee in my hand. Bryn was beside me, checking her phone. Vincent leaned against my truck, arms crossed, watching the main entrance. "Here we go," Bryn murmured as 3 black SUVs pulled into the lot. The FBI. Agent Ramsey had planned this carefully. 7:15 a.m. shift change. Maximum witnesses. Maximum impact. I took a sip of coffee and waited. Through the glass doors of the main entrance, I could see the hospital lobby. Nurses in scrubs, doctors with tablets, security guards at their posts, and then I saw him, Dr. Preston Vaughn, walking down the main corridor in surgical scrubs. He was mid-conversation with 2 residents probably discussing a procedure. His posture was confident, relaxed. He had no idea what was coming. Agent Ramsey and 3 other agents stepped through the entrance doors. Preston looked up, confused at first, then shocked. Ramsey said something I couldn't hear from where I stood. Preston's face shifted, confusion, then recognition, then rage. One of the agents pulled out a pair of handcuffs. Preston took a step back. His mouth moved, probably denying everything, demanding to speak to his lawyer. But Ramsey didn't hesitate. He nodded to one of the other agents who stepped forward and cuffed Preston's hands behind his back. The nurses stopped walking. A resident dropped his coffee cup. Everyone in the lobby turned to stare. Phones came out. People started recording. Ramsey gestured toward the main hallway, and the agents began walking Preston through the hospital. Not the back exit, not the service corridor, the main hallway, past the nurses' stations, past the surgical suites, past the administrative offices. A perp walk. Preston, still in his surgical scrubs, still wearing his hospital ID badge, handcuffed and escorted by federal agents, through the hospital where he'd worked for 2 years. I watched through the glass as they walked him past his colleagues, past the people who'd trusted him, past the administrators who'd hired him. His face was red, his jaw clenched, but he kept his eyes down. The agents reached the main entrance and pushed open the doors. Preston stepped outside into the morning sunlight. And then he saw me. I was standing beside my truck 50 feet away, coffee cup raised in a mock salute. Even from that distance, I saw the moment he recognized me. Saw the hatred flare in his eyes. I didn't smile, didn't say anything, just held his gaze. Bryn glanced at me. "You're vindictive. I'm thorough." The agents led Preston toward one of the SUVs. That's when the news vans arrived, 3 of them pulling into the lot with cameras already rolling. The FBI had tipped them off. Ramsey had told me they would. Reporters jumped out, microphones in hand. "Dr. Vaughn, are the charges true? How many victims were there?" "Did Seattle Grace know about the fraud?" Preston said nothing. just ducked his head as the agents opened the back door of the SUV and guided him inside. The door slammed. The SUV pulled away. By noon, every doctor, nurse, and administrator in Seattle's medical community would know. By evening, it would be on the regional news. My phone buzzed. A text from Audrey Kingsley. I just saw the news. Thank you. After 4 years, there's finally justice. I typed back, he won't be able to hurt anyone else. That's what matters. Another message came through. From Diane, I'm sorry for everything. I stared at it for a moment. Then I deleted it without replying. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. William Prescott, CEO of Seattle Grace Hospital, I answered. Thornton, Mr. Thornton. His voice was formal, careful. I wanted to personally apologize. We had no knowledge of Dr. Vaughn's activities outside the hospital. I appreciate that. Your contracts with us remain intact. In fact, we'd like to discuss expanding our partnership. I kept my voice professional. I'll have my office reach out next week. Thank you, and again our deepest apologies. He hung up. The hospital was protecting itself, distancing from Preston. Smart. Vincent pushed off from my truck. Coffee. I nodded. We walked 3 blocks to a small cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. A TV mounted above the counter was tuned to the local news. Breaking news this morning, a prominent Seattle surgeon has been arrested on federal wire fraud charges. Dr. Preston Vaughn, a cardiac surgeon at Seattle Grace Hospital, is accused of defrauding multiple women over the course of a decade. Bryn ordered a latte. Vincent got black coffee. I just wanted to sit. We found a table by the window. On the TV, footage of Preston being led out of the hospital played on loop. Bryn sipped her latte. He'll be out on bail by tonight, but the damage is done. Vincent nodded. The medical board will suspend his license pending trial. I leaned back in my chair. Ramsey said the trial will be in 3 to 4 months. Audrey, Amanda, Valerie, Diane, they'll all testify. He's looking at 15 to 20 years, Bryn said. On the TV, a reporter stood outside Seattle Grace recounting Preston's history. The victims, the pattern, the fake LLCs. Vincent looked at me. How do you feel? I thought about it. 25 years of marriage gone. A brother I'd never known existed. A son who wasn't mine biologically, but was mine in every way that mattered. A wife who'd lied about everything. A surgeon who'd conned us both, now facing federal prison. I feel like I can finally breathe, I said. And I meant it. Preston was under arrest. Diane was cooperating. The divorce would be finalized soon. The house, the business, the money, all of it would stay with me. In a few weeks, Evan would come home for Thanksgiving. And I'd have to decide when to tell him the truth. Not if, when. But today justice had been served. Vincent raised his coffee cup. To consequences, Bryn and I clinked our cups against his. On the TV above the counter, the news anchor moved on to the next story. But the image of Preston in handcuffs being led through the hospital, in his surgical scrubs, stayed in my mind. That was the image that would define him now. Not the brilliant surgeon. Not the charming doctor, the con artist, the criminal, the man who'd finally been caught. I took a sip of my coffee and watched the morning light filter through the cafe window. For the first time in 5 weeks, I felt something close to peace. 2.5 weeks had passed since Preston's arrest. The paperwork was processed. Diane had cooperated with the FBI and the fraud charges against her were dropped in exchange for testimony. On Monday, October 28th, we met for divorce mediation. Bryn walked beside me into the office, neutral walls, bland art, a conference table built for endings. Diane was already seated with her court-appointed attorney, Heather Moss. I barely recognized her. No designer clothes, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. The confident woman from the gala was gone. In her place sat someone exhausted, defeated. She glanced at me briefly, then looked away. Dr. Julia Kenwood, the mediator, sat at the head of the table, efficient, detached. We're here to finalize the dissolution of the marriage between Caleb and Diane Thornton. Married 25 years. One adult child. Mr. Thornton is represented by Bryn Whitmore. Mrs. Thornton by Heather Moss. She opened her folder. Ms. Whitmore, present the proposed terms. Bryn slid our documents forward. The marital home, valued at $800,000, transfers entirely to Mr. Thornton. The mortgage included an infidelity clause drafted by Mr. Thornton's father. In the event of adultery, full ownership remains with the wronged party. Heather blinked. She hadn't known. Retirement accounts total $1.4 million. $1.2 million remains with Mr. Thornton. Mrs. Thornton retains her 401k valued at $200,000. The construction business, valued at $500,000, remains solely with Mr. Thornton. No alimony requested or offered based on adultery and financial fraud. Heather leaned forward. This settlement is extremely one-sided. Mrs. Thornton contributed to this marriage for 25 years. Bryn's tone sharpened. Mrs. Thornton committed adultery and stole $180,000 from joint accounts. She also concealed the true paternity of their son. She avoided criminal prosecution only because of federal cooperation. Diane flinched. Dr. Kenwood turned to her. Do you contest the proposed settlement? Diane finally looked at me. Her eyes were hollow. No, I don't contest it. Her voice was barely audible. Caleb is right. About everything. I destroyed our marriage. I lied. I stole. I threw away 25 years because... She let out a brittle laugh. Because of a con artist who never cared about me. Heather touched her arm. Diane, it's true. I was selfish. I wanted to feel desired, important. And I destroyed what actually mattered. She faced me. I'm sorry, Caleb. I know that fixes nothing. But I am sorry. Acknowledged, I said. Bryn cleared her throat. One additional matter. The paternity clause. Heather frowned. Paternity clause. Evan is not Mr. Thornton's biological son. Mrs. Thornton knew from the beginning and chose not to disclose it. Mr. Thornton discovered this during divorce proceedings. Diane began crying quietly. Heather looked between us. Does Evan know? Not yet, I said. And he won't hear it from her. I placed another document on the table. A non-disclosure clause. Diane is prohibited from telling Evan or anyone else about his true paternity. Violation triggers financial penalties and potential loss of visitation. Heather shifted uneasily. You intend to enforce silence about paternity. I'm protecting my son. He's 20. Senior year of college. His identity doesn't need to collapse right now. He'll learn the truth eventually, on my timeline. Diane's voice trembled. When? After graduation. When he's ready. Will I be there? I haven't decided. She nodded. I agree. He shouldn't hear it from me. Dr. Kenwood made notes. All terms agreed. Bryn and Heather confirmed. Then sign. It took 15 minutes. Diane's signature shook. Mine did not. The court will process within 72 hours, Dr. Kenwood said. Your divorce will be finalized by week's end. Thank you, I replied. Diane remained seated. Caleb, can we talk? Just a minute. Bryn glanced at me. 5 minutes. Everyone stepped outside. We stood on opposite sides of the table. I know I have no right to ask for anything, Diane began. But you should know something. I waited. I did love you. In the beginning. Maybe even until you didn't, I finished. Until I got scared. Of getting older. Of becoming invisible. Of feeling like the best parts of my life were over. She wiped her eyes. That doesn't excuse what I did. But it's the truth. Preston made me feel seen again. Young. Important. I wanted that feeling so badly, I ignored every warning sign. You traded 25 years for an illusion. I traded it because I was a coward. Because real love takes work, and I didn't want to face that. She met my eyes. Real love is built on truth, and I lied from the start. About Evan. About everything. I know, and I'll regret it forever. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just hope you believe I'm sorry. And that being Evan's mother, that part was real. I love him. He's my son, I said quietly. Biology doesn't change that. 20 years of raising him is real. You don't get to take that from me. I know, and I'm grateful he has you. Silence filled the room. Will I see you at Thanksgiving? She asked softly. Evan wants us both there. I'll be there. You can come. But we're not a family anymore. We're Evan's parents. She nodded. That's more than I deserve. I turned toward the door. Caleb, I paused. For what it's worth, you were a good husband, a good father. None of this was your fault. I didn't respond. I walked out. Bryn met me in the hallway. You okay? I'm done, I said, finally. She nodded. Now comes the hard part. Evan would be home for Thanksgiving in 3 weeks. I still had to decide when to tell him the truth. We stepped outside. The Seattle sky was gray rain threatening. I climbed into my truck and sat for a moment. 2.5 weeks earlier, I'd watched Preston Vaughn led away in handcuffs through the hospital where he'd built his reputation. Exposed. Today, I'd signed the papers ending my marriage. In 72 hours, Diane Thornton would be my ex-wife, and I would be free. Free from lies, free from pretending, free from carrying someone else's deception. I pulled out of the lot and headed home, to the house that was now entirely mine, to a life I hadn't planned but was ready to rebuild. Rain began as I crossed the bridge, steady, cleansing. For the first time in 7 weeks, I could finally breathe. Wednesday afternoon, November 27th, I stood at the kitchen window watching my son's truck pull into the driveway. Evan stepped out. My son, whatever the DNA test said, shouldered his duffel bag and walked toward the front door. He looked good, healthy, happy, completely unaware that his world was about to shift. Not yet, I reminded myself. Not today. The front door burst open with his usual energy. Dad. He dropped the bag and pulled me into a hug. God, it's good to be home. I held him tight. It's good to have you home. I meant it. Evan pulled back, looking around. Where's Mom? She's staying somewhere else. You'll see her tomorrow at Thanksgiving dinner. His face fell. So it really happened. The divorce. The papers were finalized 3 weeks ago. I'm sorry. Evan dropped onto the couch. Damn. I knew it was coming, but it's still weird to hear it out loud. I sat across from him. I know this isn't easy. Was it because of Mom's affair, that guy at the hospital? Partly. There were other factors too. Like what? This was the moment. I could tell him everything. About the DNA, about Diane's 25-year lie, about Preston's fraud, all of it. But I looked at Evan, 20 years old, home for the holiday, already processing his parents' divorce, and I realized, not yet. Not now. Like the fact that your mom and I wanted different things. Sometimes people grow apart. It's not anyone's fault. It was someone's fault. But this was a kind lie. Evan studied me. Are you okay? I mean, really okay. I'm getting there. The last few months have been rough, but I'm managing. If you need to talk, I know, thank you. I leaned forward. But right now, I need you to focus on school. Finish strong. Graduate. Don't let our problems become your problems. You're still my dad. Your problems are my problems. I appreciate that. But Evan, I chose my words carefully. I'm your father and I love you. Nothing will ever change that. Remember that. No matter what happens. No matter what you might hear later. Evan looked confused by the intensity. I know, Dad. Why are you talking like something else is about to happen? because life is complicated, and sometimes the truth is messy. But through all of it, one thing stays constant: you're my son, and I love you. Yeah, okay. He accepted it even if he didn't fully understand. Oh, there's someone else you should meet. Who? Your Uncle Vincent. Evan blinked. What uncle? I explained. Vincent was my half-brother from our father's affair before I was born. We'd found each other during the divorce. It was a long story. I'd explain it all later. Evan shook his head. This family gets weirder by the day. You have no idea. Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. An unusual gathering at my house. Present Caleb, Evan, Diane, silent, barely eating, Vincent, Bryn, and Audrey Kingsley. Evan looked around the table. This is the weirdest Thanksgiving I've ever been to. Bryn poured wine. Weird doesn't mean bad. Vincent asked Evan about his engineering major. They bonded over problem-solving mechanical systems. Dad didn't tell me much about you, Evan said. Where did you come from? Vincent smiled. Long story. Short version, I'm your dad's half-brother from our father's affair before Caleb was born. We didn't know each other existed until recently. Family's complicated. No kidding, Evan noticed Audrey. How do you know my dad? Audrey answered carefully. Through some shared circumstances. Your father helped me resolve some legal issues with my ex-husband. He was incredibly kind, a sanitized version. Evan didn't need to know the Preston connection. Your father is a good man, one of the best I've ever met. Evan smiled. He's pretty great. I raised my glass. To new beginnings, to truth even when it's painful, to family in all its forms, to the fact that we're all still standing. To standing, Bryn echoed. To family, Vincent added. Even Diane quietly raised her glass. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Later that evening, Evan and I stood on the back porch. Seattle rain was falling. So, you want to tell me what's really going on? There's something you're not telling me. About Mom, about the divorce, about why you keep saying, I'll always be your father, like it's being questioned. I faced the moment of truth again. I could tell him now. Should tell him. But I looked at Evan home for the holiday needing stability, already dealing with too much, and made the decision not today. You're right. There are things I haven't told you. About your mother and me. About decisions made a long time ago. But those things don't change who you are. They don't change what I am to you. When the time is right, when you're ready, I'll tell you everything. I promise. When will that be? After you graduate? After you finish school? After you've had a chance to live your life without this hanging over your head? Is it that bad? It's that complicated. But I need you to trust me. Trust that I'm protecting you, not hiding from you. I do trust you. Why, good. Then trust me on this. Finish school, graduate, build your life, and then we'll talk. About everything. Evan nodded slowly. Okay, but Dad, yeah. Whatever it is, whatever you're not telling me, it's not going to change anything. You're my dad. That's non-negotiable. I pulled him into a hug. I love you, son. I love you too. Later that night, after Evan had gone to bed, I stood on the back porch, watching the rain fall over Seattle. Vincent joined me with 2 beers. You decided not to tell him, he said. It wasn't a question. Not yet. He's got enough to process. Parents divorced, new uncle life-changing. He doesn't need the paternity truth on top of that. When are you going to tell him? After he graduates, in the next 6 months. When he's ready. Vincent nodded. Wise or cowardly? Sometimes they're the same thing. I laughed despite myself. Thanks for the support. That's what brothers are for, Vincent said. And somehow standing there with the brother I'd never known I had, protecting the son who wasn't mine biologically, but was mine in every way that mattered. I felt more like a father than I ever had before. The rain fell steady. The house behind us was warm. My son was home safe, loved. The truth would come, eventually. But tonight, this moment, this fragile, imperfect, reconstructed family was enough. Vincent raised his beer. To complicated truths, I clinked my bottle against his. To protecting what matters. We drank in silence, two brothers watching the rain, each of us carrying secrets, both of us learning what it meant to be family. Inside, Evan slept in his childhood bedroom, unaware that in 6 months, everything he knew about himself would change. But for tonight, he was just a college kid home for Thanksgiving, and I was just his father, and that was the only truth that mattered. 3 months after Thanksgiving, on a gray afternoon in late February, I stood with Vincent at our father's grave, setting down flowers we'd chosen together. "You think he knew," Vincent asked, "that we'd end up here like this, Dad?" I shook my head. He was too busy running from his mistakes to imagine us making peace with them. Vincent rested his hand on the headstone. "Thanks for being a terrible father. It brought us together." I laughed softly. "That's one way to look at it. The only way. If he'd been honest, we probably never would have met. So, thanks, I guess." We stood in silence, then walked away side by side. 5 months had passed since the parking garage video changed everything. The divorce was finalized in November. The house was mine. The business was mine. My life felt like mine again. Vincent had become a steady presence: weekly dinners, Seahawks games, occasional help reviewing subcontractors. The brother I never knew existed turned out to be exactly what I needed. Bryn and I had grown closer too. She handled the divorce flawlessly, no appeals, no resistance. A complete legal victory. But beyond that, we'd strengthened as siblings through everything we endured. And then there was Audrey. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend hikes in the Cascades. Two people who understood betrayal, learning to trust again. We weren't rushing, just building something honest, one careful step at a time. My business was thriving. Word spread about how I handled Preston with restraint, integrity, and professionalism. Clients respected that. New contracts kept coming. Diane was living in Redmond now, in a modest 1-bedroom apartment. She worked as a medical billing clerk, earning a fraction of her former salary. Her career as a hospital administrator was over. She saw Evan occasionally. Their relationship was strained, but not beyond repair. She was in therapy twice a week, trying to rebuild from the wreckage she'd caused. I didn't hate her anymore. I just felt nothing. She made her choices. Now she lived with them. Preston's trial began in early February. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Audrey, Amanda Sutton, Valerie Porter, and Hannah Shepard, the women he'd deceived. On day 3, Diane testified under immunity. She described how Preston seduced her, persuaded her to invest in Summit Healthcare Partners, and promised a future he never intended to give. The defense tried to portray her as complicit, but she held firm. On day 5, Audrey took the stand. Calm, powerful, devastating. She detailed how Preston stole $400,000 from her inheritance, derailed her career, destroyed her marriage, and silenced her with NDAs. "Did you believe Dr. Vaughn loved you?" the prosecutor asked. For a long time, Audrey replied, meeting his eyes. But none of it was real. Preston Vaughn is a predator. He uses people until they're empty, then discards them. The jury watched his face. They saw what I'd seen all along: the con artist behind the surgeon's mask. Amanda testified. Valerie testified. Hannah testified. An FBI forensic accountant presented spreadsheets proving $2 million stolen over a decade. After 2 weeks, the jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge showed no sympathy. "You abused your position, your education, and your charm," she said. "You targeted vulnerable women and defrauded them systematically. The harm you caused is profound. 18 years in federal prison. Medical license permanently revoked. Assets forfeited. Audrey squeezed my hand as the sentence was read. Vincent nodded beside me. Justice had finally arrived. Evan was finishing his senior year at the University of Washington. He'd graduate in June with an engineering degree and a job waiting in Portland. He called every week. Still called me Dad. Our bond was stronger than ever. He still didn't know about the DNA test. I would tell him after graduation. Let him complete college without his identity unraveling. That was my final protection. For now, he was simply my son. And I was simply his father. One evening, I stood on my back porch with a beer watching the Seattle skyline glow. 56 years old, starting over, but not from nothing. I had Evan. I had Vincent. I had Audrey. I had Bryn. I had a business built with my own hands and a reputation earned honestly. My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. Hey, Dad. Just wanted to say thanks. For everything. For being honest. For being you. Love you. I smiled and replied, love you too, son. Always will. Later that night, Vincent asked, you forgive him? Our father. Yeah, I said. Not because he deserves it. Because I'm tired of carrying his mistakes. Me too, he answered. Resentment is heavy. We were done with it. Then Bryn called. Preston was officially transferred to federal prison today, she said. It's over. It's over, I repeated. And it was. I looked around my kitchen at the photos on the refrigerator. Evan's graduation announcement. Vincent and me at a Seahawks game. A Thanksgiving photo, awkward but real. People say blood is thicker than water. I've learned something different. Blood doesn't make a family. Choice does. Presence does. Love does. I chose Evan every day for 20 years. That makes me his father. Vincent chose to stand beside me. That makes him my brother. Diane chose betrayal. Preston chose greed. They chose themselves. I chose forgiveness. Not for them. For me. Because carrying hatred is exhausting. I'm 56. I have a son who loves me. A brother I didn't know I needed. A woman who understands my scars. A thriving business. A sister who fought for me. Most people spend their lives searching for family. I found mine in a parking garage. Life is strange that way. The family you choose can be stronger than the one you're born into. And the love you build is worth more than the love you're given. I'm Caleb Thornton, and I'm finally free. And to you, listening to this family story, remember this betrayal doesn't just destroy marriages. It shatters identities, rewrites histories, and forces you to question everything you thought was true. But here's what I learned through all of it. First, dad revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. Real dad revenge is about protecting what matters most. Your children, your integrity, your future. I could have burned Diane's life to the ground. I could have told Evan everything the moment I found out. But dad revenge, true revenge, is choosing restraint when rage would be easier. It's choosing your son's well-being over your own wounded pride. Second, this family story taught me that family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by who shows up. Who stands beside you when everything falls apart. Vincent, a stranger 6 months ago, became my brother. Not because we share blood, but because he chose to protect me. That's what family stories are really about, the people who choose you when they don't have to. Third, God puts people in your path for a reason. I'm not a perfect Christian, but I believe Vincent finding me in that parking garage wasn't random. It was providence. When my family story was falling apart, God was already writing a new chapter I couldn't see yet. Here's my advice. Don't be like me. Don't wait 25 years to face the truth. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't let fear of confrontation keep you living in a lie. If something feels wrong in your marriage, in your family, address it. Have the hard conversations early before they become catastrophic. But if you find yourself where I was standing in a parking lot, watching your life crumble, remember this. You get to choose what comes next. You can choose bitterness, or you can choose building. You can choose revenge, or you can choose peace. I chose peace, and it saved me. If this family story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Have you faced betrayal, found family in unexpected places? Your story matters. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories about navigating life's hardest moments with integrity. Thank you for following this journey to the end. Your time and attention mean everything. A word of caution. The stories you'll hear on this channel may contain fictionalized elements created for educational and reflective purposes. If the content doesn't suit you, feel free to explore other videos that better match your preferences. We respect your choice. I'm Caleb Thornton, and I'm finally free.
아이 배불러. 뭔가 신박한 컨텐츠가 없을까? 얜 뭐요? 야, 피노키오? 와, 발 존나 크네 이 새끼. 다리는 개 얇고.